it's time to talk. Look, it's July 21st. Camp opens basically in a week. So it is time to talk about what we have in the boat, the team that's going to be lining up against Notre Dame in the Rock. And the most important thing, obviously, who's taking that first snap in spring. The picture was a little murkier, not because we didn't know who the projected starter was, but because he wasn't throwing. Now, Carson Beck, been throwing all offseason, looks ready to rock and roll at quarterback. So a little more clarity at this position.
Yeah, obviously still the questions. It's just going to be natural, even though we're hearing very good things about his health and his progress. Until those live bullets start flying, I don't think that we can be 100% sure. And that's not saying that we're doubting what we're hearing, D. That's just the nature of an injury like this at this position, right? So I think that still remains to be seen. We'll get an even clearer picture of it now when camp starts, I believe, because a lot of what we're hearing right now is just player workouts, right? And the pads aren't obviously popping, and we expect things to be. We still expect him to kind of be brought along, right? I don't think there's going to be much contact for him in this early part of camp, and maybe camp at all. But I definitely think that there's going to be a lot of excitement once that happens, because we talked about it all spring. It was hard, just being real here, for this offense to get going at times during spring because the quarterback play was not consistent enough, right? And we'll talk about that with the rest of this group and what that means moving forward. But I think the offense needs to get some confidence early in camp here, because you have so many moving pieces of the receiver position, so many guys who haven't played necessarily all that much. So very important for really Carson Beck to get off to a good start here when camp opens here in the next couple weeks, 10 days or so.
Yeah, and the momentum will be there from offseason, because I've heard he's full go, throwing hard. The arm looks like an NFL arm. The athleticism looks like NFL athleticism. He's 6'4". IQ off the charts. These guys, the people observing Carson Beck, just had Cam Ward, #1 overall pick, the best quarterback that we've ever seen. So they're calibrated to the highest level when you talk about knowing what it's supposed to look like. With Beck, they're saying the IQ is there. We know what IQ is. We just had Cam Ward. The arm, meaning velocity, the ability to layer throws, not just throw everything like a fastball, hit different parts of the field, that is there. The athleticism is there, the twitchiness. So, they think this guy's a first-round type pick, talent-wise, as advertised. The arm is back. He had the IQ and the toughness they're not worried about at all. Again, different type of leader than Cam Ward. We've talked about this before. The differences between a Cam Ward and a Carson Beck, to me, out of the pocket, Ward just used the whole field. He was very much a guard, right? You saw him in high school as a basketball player, leading scorer in the history of his high school. He was a combo guard, scoring, passing, just kind of seeing the whole floor. With Beck, when he rolls out, he can roll out. I think he's just as athletic as Ward from a run, jump kind of standpoint, but maybe doesn't have that just playmaking vision of the whole field that made Ward pretty unique. Also got him in trouble with some of those across body throws. And then just leadership-wise, different personality, not as vocal. Just not as vocal as a Cam Ward. But IQ-wise, I've heard they're very similar, and that's a good thing because Ward's at the top of the scale there. I heard arm-wise, very similar. And really, if you put him in a decathlon, Beck might win, right? So athletically, very similar as well. People are extremely, extremely excited about Beck. The word electric was used just to describe his talent. They think he's going to be one of the best players in the ACC. And P, as we go through the stats here, 2023, when he had Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey, two of the best young players in the NFL, although they were injured at times during this year, 3,941 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 INTs, an incredible 167.9 quarterback rating, one of the most efficient, productive players in the country, projected #1 overall pick coming off that year. Last year took a dip. We've talked a ton about how Georgia led the nation in drops, how the offensive line really underachieved. The running game was in the hundreds. So we know all those things. But even if you take that all into account, you look at the numbers, 3,485 yards, almost 3,500 yards, 28 touchdowns, actually threw 4 more touchdowns than he did the year before. The interceptions went up. goes from 6 to 12. You could tell he was forcing it a lot. And the yards per attempt went down because he just didn't have the playmakers he had before. But still, I mean, 3,500 yards, that's a good Miami Hurricanes season. So I think even if you take last year's Beck, it's not like he was like a shell of himself last year, just maybe not as efficient.
Comment here from Peony Boys says, I was at the stadium when the team was running the stadium. We saw the pictures that came out on social media there. He says, Emory's a lot bigger than I thought. Tony is looking bigger than JoJo.
Yeah. By the way, thank you, Peony Boys, as always, for the contribution, plus the inside info, man. That's nice as well. Yeah, we got a lot of size in the quarterback room when you really break it down. Obviously, Beck is a bigger quarterback. We'll get into Emory Williams in a second, but he has some size. Malachi Tony, I'm looking for the picture. I don't know. I know FSU.
It was his mom who tweeted it out, the one you're thinking of.
It's funny because I know we always make fun of FSU because they're always like posting shirtless pictures of the players. So I'm not sure we're going to go in that direction with Malachi Tony, but he definitely looked bigger. And you can tell he's been working out. Malachi Tony, and we'll get to this in the receiver breakdown, but I just think superstar potential, or at least star potential, is what you hear, right? So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, Emory Williams got size. Carson Beck has size as well. This is somebody, just focusing on Beck now, when you look at the tools that he brings to the table, 6'4", legit, 220, legit. You look at him in person, his upper body's pretty skinny, which, I mean, Tom Brady had a pretty skinny upper body. These guys shouldn't be bodybuilders. You look at Will Levis, is kind of a tight, overly muscled quarterback. Upper body's fine. His lower body, Beck, you've been around him, Pete, very strong. He's just a very strong base. When you see him, the 220 to me is legit just because he's so strong through the legs.
Yeah, you mentioned how if they just tested like in a combine setting, Beck would probably test better overall. That's a very small part of the position as we understand, but I think that's probably something that people are underestimating about Beck is that athleticism. I think Ward, his feel for the game inside of the pocket and eluding pressure and then being able to make the plays downfield. I don't know that Beck has that whole package in his arsenal, but in terms of just driving the ball downfield, and again, with what we know about the progression of the recovery, it looks like he's going to be able to do what he did on tape when you saw some of those big time throws at Georgia. But I think his arm he might have a bigger arm than Ward too. Now, Ward made some throws that Beck cannot make in contorting his body certain ways. Again, like we're talking about that, I don't know that Beck has that in his arsenal. But if we're talking about a purely clean pocket and letting these guys just rip it downfield, Beck might have the bigger arm.
And Pete, I love multi-sport comparisons, multi-sport quarterbacks, multi-sport athletes. The reason being, look at the NFL, look at what plays. If to me, you're either a running quarterback who can also pass, which is like Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, legitimate runners, or you're a multi-sport player. Look at Joe Burrow, basketball, really a basketball first kind of player until he got to college and refined his passing. His passing was not what it is now coming out of college because he was more of a basketball player. Cam Ward, the leading scorer in his high school, really more of a basketball player than a quarterback until later on in the process. You have Patrick Mahomes, basketball and baseball. Josh Allen, basketball and baseball. Justin Herbert, basketball and baseball. Tom Brady was drafted as a baseball player. Aaron Rodgers played all those sports as well. So, that's really, to me, the name of the game when it comes to quarterbacks. You're either a runner and a passer, or you're a multi-sport guy, or both. So with Beck, his sport was baseball. He was a third baseman committed to the University of Florida as a third baseman and as a freshman in high school. So here you got the swing here. It's a good looking athletic swing, and obviously with the size. So with Beck, if you compare him to Ward, I think you look at their sports backgrounds. Ward is a combo guard, right? What's a combo guard do in basketball? They can pass, they can see the floor, and if they need to keep it for themselves, they know how to keep it for themselves and make the play themselves as far as scoring. That's Ward, right? He's always seeing the whole floor. He's throwing it to every part of the field, no matter where he's at, in the pocket, outside the pocket. He just has that kind of vision and that confidence to see those angles from basketball. Also, if he needs to run it, he'll run it. If he needs to pass it, he'll pass it. He's a combo guard. With Beck, he is your classic third baseman. What's third base in baseball? That's your guy with some size. 6'4" is pretty ideal. That's going to be an athletic player, much more athletic than your average first baseman. And then, of course, you need an arm. Third base to first base, that's a very far distance. You got to have the arm strength, and the athleticism plays into the quick reactions. It's the hot corner. You're right there from the, for a right-handed hitter, the ball's going right to you if they pull it. So I think with all that, Beck is a third baseman. He has size. He's a great athlete. He has a strong arm. Maybe not, again, the whole field reader outside the pocket that Ward is. In the pocket, Beck is great at reading the whole field. He is not someone that locks onto targets. You talking to people at Georgia, just in general, everything you hear about Beck and everything you see on tape, he'll hit the running backs for checkdowns. He'll hit the tight end. He'll hit whoever's open. He has great vision in the pocket. Ward, probably better vision outside the pocket. But again, you see this dude right here. If you're committed to Florida as a freshman, you're talking about MLB, pro type talent.
Yep, I agree.
So yeah, that's to me the story in Beck. I mean, P, let me ask you, because I've been talking about some of the things I've heard about Beck as far as just the arm talent, the athleticism, the confidence. I've heard people compare, like if you talk about TVD, right? So Ward is the top of the scale as far as being an outspoken leader, but also being one of the guys, not being that outspoken leader that everybody finds annoying. The outspoken leader that's also has the credibility and people like him and respect him. TVD would be the very quiet, kind of always to himself, just didn't project a lot of confidence, just kind of a down personality. Nothing negative as far as like, I never heard him really be a bad guy, but just not a lot coming out. With Beck, I hear very confident. You see against the girls, he knows he's good, and he's confident in his skin. He's from Florida. He's not from, Connecticut. He's from Jacksonville, Florida, played in Georgia. This environment, being in the Southeast, nothing new to him, but not the extrovert that Ward is. So just what have you heard about Beck? Any tidbits? I know you talked to a lot of people beyond personality, talent, whatever it is.
I mean, and I said this on a show maybe 3 weeks ago, but the biggest theme that I've heard with Beck, just not to make everything in comparison with Ward, but you're coming off of a guy who just had the season he had, and obviously any of us would take that any year, right? As the quarterback of the University of Miami, a number one pick, and if things go a certain way, probably should have been the Heisman winner as well. But Cam Ward wasn't a known player to these Miami guys when he came to Miami. He had to, his personality was what it was, but these guys weren't watching Washington State games. They really did not know who he was. Certain guys, yes, heard of him. And like when he became a name in the portal, yes, people saw his stuff and were excited, but this was not a household name whatsoever. He had to come in and kind of let himself be known to this team, right? And show who he was. And very quickly, none of that was a fake thing, right? That's just who Cam was, right? We've made that clear. We've seen that now over the last year plus, and we'll see what happens in the pros. I've said before, I'm concerned about the situation at Tennessee, but at the end of the day, Carson Beck came in here, and what keeps being told to me is from players and coaches, 24-3. And it was an amazing situation around him at Georgia. Defensively last year, we know the struggles with the drops. We know the run game wasn't what it has been in the past. We know he did not have Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey as weapons, but that goes a long way when you step into a locker room and guys are very familiar with who you are when you're playing in prime time every week in the SEC. And I mean, to me, that's been the biggest thing is that, yeah, he's not the same guy as Cam in terms of getting in people's faces and really challenging guys. But that's not always what you need in a situation, right? Especially when you have a CJ Daniels in that receiver room, who I think that's going a long way in the development of those guys or the maturation process of those guys. as I should say.
Yeah, and you look at last year, Xavier Restrepo, Elijah Arroyo, I'd say those were his top 2 targets by far. Then you go to a Jacoby George, who's a senior, 4-year senior. Sam Brown, older player. I think he was like a 5th-year player. Isaiah Horton, 3rd-year player. Mature type personality. So it's not like Ward was bringing along young players like a JoJo Trader or a Nye Carr. I don't know if his personality is great. I think he's if I had to pick a quarterback's intangibles to be the quarterback of the Kings, I'm picking Cam Ward over anybody I've been around, even Dorsey. But for young players, he's very much, I'm trying to win now. Of course, he's one and done. He had that extra, he was not afraid to get after these guys. So I'm not sure young players were the best fit for what he was trying to do. Obviously, the number 1 offense in the country, number 1 passing offense in the country, did whatever he wanted to do was what was done. It worked out. But I don't think that
I don't think he had the patience is probably the word. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a great way to put it. So Beck, he's also one and done. He's trying to go to the NFL, but
it was a win. It was a win now. And like, he's got to get his situation right. So I don't know that he was going to be sitting there with God. I mean, let's not say he didn't do that either, but again, I think the frustrations with the young guys probably came to play a little quicker than some of the older guys.
Yeah, and look, Beck, I don't think will chew out a receiver the same way that Ward will, a young receiver. He'll hold him accountable, but Beck is he was class of 2020. He signed to play college before the pandemic, so he's old and he's a veteran. He'll hold them accountable, but he's not going to maybe attack them the same way a Ward would. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, just different personalities for better and worse. CJ Daniels is, to me, really the key with those young receivers. As far as Beck's also not going to, mentor the young receivers necessarily. He'll throw to them, but I think CJ Daniels will probably be the guy that we didn't necessarily have in the room last year. That's going to be really investing in those young receivers. Because I don't think last year you had veterans, but the veterans you had last year were very much focused on their own performance, which they needed to be. I mean, they were trying to get to the next level. The results speak for themselves. It was the top passing game in the country. But with Daniels, I just think he's more just talking to him and being around him and talking to people about him. He's much more conscious about helping the young receivers. And then Beck is not going to chew him out. So it's going to be a different dynamic at that position. I think the quarterback has a lot to do with it.
Canes fan 1424 says, I think the wide receivers get a lot more rotation this year compared to last year. I agree. I think there was a lot more set in stone last year coming in. And there's a bit more up in the air. You look at slot, for example, there's a lot of people who think Tony Johnson could be a nice contributor for this team. But at the same time, Malachi Toney continues to emerge. And I'm kind of getting the vibe I got on Elijah Lofton last year, where like people weren't ready to say he was like the best player on the offense or anything like that, but he was a guy that people thought was up there, right? And I think with Malachi Toney, it's a very, very similar feeling.
Yeah, I agree totally. When you talk about people with Malachi Toney, and we have the receiver breakdown, which we'll do in a little bit, but just to your point, Canes fan, 1424, the buzz you hear on Malachi is more of like, this guy's going to be a household name than this guy's going to help us as a freshman. It's much more like, hey, this guy's going to be, the guy that people focus on, the star. He'd be a freshman still. I'm not saying he's going to get 1,200 yards, but he'll be the one we talk about. So we'll see. But yeah, you're right. Lofton was like that. Jordan Lyle was like that. OJ Frederic was like that the year before. Ruben Bain was like that. Noah was like that. So we'll see how it plays out. But definitely Tony's getting that kind of buzz. Here's a question for you, Pete, or comment I want you to touch on. He said, C. Marcus Smith says, if Carson Beck had transferred to Ohio State, Notre Dame, Oregon, etc., those teams would be the favorite to win the national championship. He's at Miami. Pundits say he's a question mark. Ward proved them wrong, so will Beck.
I mean, those teams were all in the playoff last year, so I agree they would be favored to win the championship. There's questions on Miami outside of Beck. Let's be real, guys. So just trying to look from the outside perspective, yeah, it would be viewed differently. He would be looked at. I don't think that people would necessarily. I think there'd still be questions about him, but it would probably be viewed in a different light. But I don't know that Miami would be favored. I still think there's a lot more questions at Miami than maybe some. I think the way you're looking at Ohio State right now is if they had any sort of established quarterback, I mean, they'd be the runaway favorites to win it again.
Yeah, but I agree with what he's saying as far as like just the Beck part. Some of the question marks with Beck are obviously going to be about the receivers at Miami, because it's true. If you put Beck in Ohio State, and I'm a Miami fan, and I'm looking at a situation, and I know Beck is healthy and the elbow's kind of behind him, I'd be projecting him to win the Heisman. But Jeremiah Smith, Notre Dame, they got good receivers.
He's better. He's better than Will Howard. So
significantly better than Will Howard. I mean, Julian Sain, we'll see. I'm not the biggest believer. I think his physical skills are less than what I think Beck has and what others have. I'm not the biggest Julian Sain believer, but he should be fine because of the people around him. Notre Dame, quarterbacks never played a snap. Obviously, Beck would give them more experience with all the other stuff they have. Oregon, Dante Moore, some question marks there. I think he'll be fine. But, Beck, yeah, I hear what you're saying. If you put Beck in any of those situations, we'd be talking about Beck more as a Heisman candidate. So are the questions about Beck, or are they more about what's around him, which is a different conversation?
Yeah, I saw like Joel Klatt, who I know Canes fans kind of get on sometimes, but he was pretty – he had some pretty good stuff to say about Miami, but his biggest question was who are the guys who are replacing the guys around him. Drex talking about Beck, who has a third base commit for UF as sophomores, and he said, so I think he has that shortstop, middle infielder, arm slot that Cam utilized, just wasn't asked to do it at Georgia. I don't know that Cam was asked to do it at any point of his career. I just think that's his natural ability. So look, Beck, from time to time, I'm not saying he can't make those throws, but I don't think it's going to be as much of a part of his game as Cam was, where Cam played kind of off script so much.
Yeah, but I will say Beck is very good at those short passes, right? We think about the arm slot a lot of times, talking about passes that are short intermediate. Beck's got very good placement there. He is a good athlete, so he's not going to be stiff and unnatural, right? If he goes off his spot and he has to hit those, make those throws, right? So I think he can do that, and it'll be interesting to see, man, what happens with Beck. I think the receivers, to me, were a bright spot of spring. Talking about the Dalen Upshaws, the Malachi Tonys, the Josh Moores, JoJo
Dalen
Trader.
Upshaw was mentioned to me the other day too, and I know you keep bringing him up. Upshaw, he was someone I didn't mention yesterday in the notes that I had, but he was a guy that was mentioned to me.
Yeah, so those guys all, to me, look very good in spring. You had CJ Daniels not healthy. He was coming back. He came back at the very end, made a couple spectacular catches. I'm talking about like Odell Beckham catches. Had some rusty stuff too. I mean, he was dropped a couple passes. He was coming back from injury. But you expect him coming off that surgery to repair his foot, which was messed up when he played at LSU. You're hoping more that Liberty type explosiveness when he averaged 20 yards a catch. But we'll see him. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't know you were finished.
No, I was going to say, I like the receivers, but I want to see the receivers now with Beck, because in spring, we only saw them with Emory, Judd, and Nickel, who we'll be talking about here shortly.
Drew Linfield asking why Jackson Campbell was the third best lineman in the class now, and now ninth nationally on 247. Is it because he signed with Miami? I don't know that he's ever been the first on 247. He's still number one player on the composite, which again averages out all of the rankings, and that's kind of like the standard for the industry, because it takes out just using one site's ranking. So he's still number one. D, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think he's ever been the number one guy on 247's rankings.
No, I think he was, and he dropped. I might be wrong, but I think he was, and then he dropped.
I think we've talked about this though already. Like we've talked about this.
He dropped before. Go ahead.
Before the Miami commitment, I believe he stayed at number one though, or it might have been right after. But
they had put it in the hopper. But then they announced all the new commits, or all the new positions on the rankings after he committed. So it looked like he dropped right after he committed. But from what I'm told from 247 people, and I have no reason to doubt it, he was in the mix or he was already scheduled to drop. And then the commitment happened. And then the rankings came out. Here's what I'll say about this. It's recruiting. No one knows. No one can tell you with certainty who the best tackle is in the country. I mean, it might be some 2-star that is playing tight end right now. I mean, nobody knows. It might be some Samoan that we never heard of. No one knows who the top offensive tackle in the country is right now. That's why they project. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. With 247, which is, again, the outlier with Cantwell, he is the composite number 1 overall player, like Pete said. So the consensus number 1 overall player. Or I don't say consensus, the number 1 overall player when you put everybody together. I think with 247, just from some of the things they've said, they are worried about Cantwell's pass blocking based on what he showed at the Under Armour game, which he attended as an underclassman. And I saw that game. He did struggle pass blocking. I mean, it was, if you watch that game, it might be on ESPNU or ESPN Plus or something, or YouTube. You can probably go watch it. He did struggle pass blocking. I posted about it on CanesInSight. I'm like, look, man, this guy's got some work to do. You can tell he hasn't done a lot. With that said, the guy that's number 1 on 247's tackle list, Felix Ojo, just committed to Texas Tech. He went to one of this 5-star challenge recently, of which Jontavius Wyman was the MVP, Miami commit at DB. A bunch of top guys were out there. And I heard he struggled mightily, talking about Felix Ojo, in that camp. And that a lot of people, talking about like college coaches, college personnel guys, are questioning 247 for having Felix Ojo number 1. Now I could see why Felix Ojo is number 1. He's got the length. He's got a lot of just track and field markers. He's a good, good thrower. Obviously nothing even close to what Cantwell is. He's a young player for his age. He did well at the Army All-America game. So they're all entitled to their own opinion. But I think this is just a situation. 247 is going on a limb with Cantwell. We'll see how it turns out. I think historically 247 has been very good at rankings lately. Probably, just the last, I don't know, the group that was in the draft last year, 247 was lower on that list than some of the other recruiting services as far as projecting guys properly from when they were in high school to the pros when you go back and look at it. But that's just one draft class. We'll see how it all goes, and they could be right. I personally am very confident with Cantwell because he does have questions pass blocking. Hasn't been asked to do it a ton in high school. But I think when you look at the verified athleticism, shuttle time, he has that. He has the length and size, obviously. His power in his hands based on his track measurements is otherworldly. No one's ever thrown like this as a high school prospect in our lifetimes. And then he's IQ and his intelligence and just willingness to get better and be coached is top of the charts. Both his parents were in the Olympics. So put that all together. I feel confident projecting him number 1 because he has the traits and he has the mentality to capitalize on those traits. Plus, he's being coached by Alex Mirabal, who has the best tackle in the NFL right now in Penei Sewell, has a top 10 pick here, Francis Mauigoa. We've seen his work at that position. So I feel good about the Cantwell part, but everybody's entitled to their own opinion.
I wanted to get to this question real quick before I talk about the rest of the room, right? Because obviously there's guys outside of Carson Beck. Papa Cool, who might be making this comment tongue-in-cheek a bit. He says, how come Cam Ward can work out with Tommy Castellanos, but not Beck when he came down? Well, a few things. Look, having dealt with these guys, especially after getting drafted, their focus is on themselves. I guarantee you Cam probably had no idea who was going to be at that workout other than the receivers that were out there. And as a guy who was just the first pick of the draft, and I say this respectfully, in respect to this situation, Cam Ward does not give two you-know-whats about Carson Beck in Miami right now. That's the last thing on his mind. He's focused on his season. I'm sure he has love for Miami, but I'm sure he just does not care right now. He's focused on getting ready for his season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Beck cares either. I mean, Beck is
it goes both ways.
They're the same age. Beck was projected over Cam Ward last year, so I don't think either of them are. They're focused on what they're trying to do. Castellanos could work out with Tom Brady, and I think he's still going to have some troubles throwing the football, seeing over the line, not quitting, all the things that the question marks you have on a Castellanos. So, I don't know if the agent's the same. A lot of times those things Pete knows are like agent driven or like if they have the same trainer, they work out together. If they have the same agent, they work out together. Isn't it like they have the same social media manager, they work out together? It's like things like that, right? That lead to these training relationships.
Yeah. It's a lot of it's superficial. It's not really like that. I mean, look, especially for Ward, he's trying to see which receivers are there. That's really all he cares about.
Yeah, exactly. So, I wouldn't read too much into that. All right, Pete. So next up, Emory Williams. I think with Emory, this is the important thing to know here is that Miami wanted to keep him, right? He had the opportunity to leave and pursue a starting job, and there's 130 opportunities. Someone would have given him a chance to compete to be a starter. He chose to stay at Miami. Miami wanted to keep him. I can tell you, that was a priority for them to keep him. I can tell you that talking to people. Now, the question we'll get in the comments, and I can understand where people are coming from, is wait, if they were so eager to keep him, why did they not let him throw in the games that he's played? Clemson is a true freshman. FSU is a true freshman. Then last year, second half of the bowl game against Iowa State, very run-heavy scheme, a lot of short passes. Like, it never felt like you were just letting him rip. So if you trust him so much, why do you never let him rip when he's in there, particularly last year when he's already been an older player? Good questions, but I'm told Miami valued Emory Williams. He's had his moments in practice where he's distributing the ball very well, accurate thrower, got great size, great intangibles. With the question with him, question I've always had with him since high school is just the fluidity and athleticism. I think when you see Beck and him side by side, you see that just difference in twitch and just kind of fluidity and movement skills. But the IQ is there, the size is there, the toughness is there, the team effort, team kind of mentality is there. He can throw an accurate football. He can throw a touch. It's going to come down to how does he do with live bullets? With the guys trying to hit him and he has to move a little bit, which we've seen so far. He struggled. How much improvement has he made? We won't know till he's in. Hopefully he's not in unless it's like a blowout, right? Because you want Carson Beck to stay healthy.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a huge question mark looming. Of course, if Beck does miss any time, there's going to be probably a nice little battle here during camp. But as you just mentioned, them making sure he stayed, right? I think that makes it pretty hard for me to believe that he's not going to be the number 2 on this team, D. So yeah. Luke Nickel, I think, is going to have an opportunity to push. Judd Anderson, we've been fans of his upside, but when you're talking about the backup quarterback, it needs to be someone you absolutely trust, not to like turn the ball over. And I think that you're going to probably be more prone to trust an Emory in that sort of situation. But Luke Nickel was making, as we'll get more into him now in a second, but made some good progress there at the end of spring. I just don't know that he's ready to be QB number 2.
So Kyle makes a point here. He says, fans are stupid. Iowa State was awful against the run and third nationally against the pass. That's why you try to pound the football. I think that's true. Now, the other side would say, well, Cam Ward, was throwing it like there was no one playing defense, and he had his three of his 4 top receivers out, and he was basically, like passing the ball like there was no one there. Obviously, that's Cam Ward, number 1 overall pick. So I can see both sides of that discussion. Real quick before we get to Judd Anderson or Luke Nickel, whichever one you want to take it next. Nick Isaac says, maybe too early to answer this, but let's say Beck has the big season we expect him to have. Hopefully goes first round. That's what I would expect if he does have a good season. Do we get another portal quarterback? I love Luke, but I have a hard time saying no to this. I'm not going to go on the extended rant that I always do. I am a strong, steadfast believer. Get portal quarterbacks. I've heard all the arguments against it. They're all, to me, not very compelling. I mean, you talk about Miami Hurricanes, says Ken Dorsey. Ken Dorsey graduated in 2002, so it's been 23 years. One quarterback has taken a snap in NFL games since Ken Dorsey. You know who it was, Pete?
Brock Berlin.
Transfer way before the portal.
Was it the Rams?
Yep. There you go. Portal, pre-portal transfer. He transferred from Florida. Who was the best quarterback since Brock? I mean, you could make an argument for Kaya. I would say De'Ara King, as far as an individual dominant player, leader, etc., was our best quarterback until Cam Ward. All 3 of those guys transfers. Cam Ward, number 1 overall pick of the draft. If Carson Beck has a good year, you're talking about another first-round pick. Certainly someone's going to at least probably take a snap in the NFL. So if you look at this pattern, in those 23 years, we signed a lot of high school guys in between, from the number 1 overall quarterback, number 10, you name it, all the way down the line, and they didn't do anything. So the portal has had a much higher success rate at the University of Miami than anything else. It's undeniable since Dorsey. Just look at the results. Brock, De'Ara King, Cam Ward, now hopefully Carson Beck. So to me, I'm going to the portal all day, every day. You look at the draft, almost all portal guys last year. Aside from Jalen Milroe, I believe every single player was from the portal. You had a couple FCS kids. Other than that, everybody else was from the portal last year in the draft. So to me, it's like the most common sense in the world. Here's Canes Cat saying, we got some good QBs, man. Stop it. I'm hearing about Kaya, hearing about Morris. I'm hearing about Ja'Cory. Not one of those guys played, snapped the ball in the NFL. Not one.
As on the active roster, yeah.
Morris taking a snap.
Yeah. Well, Morris in preseason. Morris got snaps. Morris got snaps.
But not regular season.
Yeah, Kaya may have gotten snaps too in the preseason as well. Remember, guys, Kaya had a pretty bad vertebrae injury that happened with the Lions as well. So that kind of effectively ended his career. He had to medically retire. But yeah, we're talking about guys who have like Brocklin started a game.
He played. And look, I love Kaya. You know, we love Kaya. We loved Kaya since he was a 2-star. When he was committed as a 2-star, or we first offered him as a 2-star, I said he's better than Kevin Olsen, who we had just signed as the highly rated guy. So I've been a Kaya fan. Stephen Morris, I've been a Stephen Morris fan. They were good, solid players. But if you're talking about the best quarterbacks we've had since Dorsey, I'm going to take Cam Ward, obviously number 1. I'm taking De'Ara King number 2. And probably taking Brock Berlin number 3. Maybe the rest of them fight out for 4th. Those top 3 guys all in the portal. I suspect Carson Beck will jump right into that.
Reek Flair says, what if Kaya stayed in 2017? Shaking my head. I don't know that was ever going to work, man. The relationship was pretty broken between him and the Ricks. Yeah,
Canes Cat's in the comments. He's wrong about a lot of stuff. Kaya wasn't a 2-star. He ended up as a 4-star, but when we got offered him, when James Coley offered him, he was like a no-star. No one ever heard of him. Pete, you remember this when we first offered Brad Kaya. He was a no-star.
Miami was his first major offer. I think Boise was the only other school. It was Boise that had offered, and he was like he was getting predictions in the early prediction era to Boise State, and then Miami came in.
Right. And then another comment from Canes Cat saying, who cares if Dorsey was trashing the NFL? He's our best quarterback ever. First of all, Dorsey played in the NFL. He actually played 16 games, believe it or not, in the NFL, even with his physical deficiencies. But yeah, like again, Dorsey was a high school guy, and this was way before the portal era. In the 23 years since Dorsey, I would say our 4 best quarterbacks. We'll see Carson Beck. Let's see our 3 best quarterbacks: Cam Ward, De'Ara King, Brock Berlin. We're all portal. I don't know who you'd kick out of there. Maybe Brock, I guess. But if Brock was in that offense that some of these guys were, with some of these receivers he had and some of the offensive lines that these guys had in the 2010s, I think Brock would be doing great. Obviously, he played in the NFL. So, I strongly believe in the portal. If you step back from Miami, look at the NFL draft. Whoever's on the computer and disagrees with what I'm saying right now, pull up the NFL draft last year, quarterback position, and see who got drafted that was not from the portal. Jalen Milroe, and that's it. Everybody else was from the portal. And you had 2 FCS guys. Everybody else was from the portal. So common sense to me.
Okay, this is a funny comment here. Canes Cat C says, I didn't see Brock Berlin, so I can't comment, but you can comment on Ken Dorsey, who was before him.
Yeah. SB Kane says, is Beck 100%? No school will say either way, but curious what we're hearing. Yes. Now, here's what I'll say with Beck. If he gets like a nick or something that happens in the offseason, he might sit out longer just because he's, like we know what he can do, and he's had injury concerns, so you don't want to push it. But as far as like full go, that's what's going on. Drex, every quarterback in the playoff semis last year was portal quarterbacks. Chat what we're talking about. I mean, look, Riley Leonard, Will Howard, who are obviously the two final ones. Dylan Gabriel last year. Just thinking of the top teams. I don't know who else was in the mix as far as those top squads. Those are the 3 that jump out: Dylan Gabriel, Will Howard, Riley Leonard. I'm sure there were more, but as far as like the top teams, that kind of jumps out to me. Sam Levitt was a transfer. Quinn Ewers was a transfer. So, I mean, just kind of go down the line.
All right, let's talk about a couple of these other young guys here, Luke and Judd Anderson.
I'll start with Judd. Let's just go seniority. So Judd Anderson, Pete, you've been out there, and I want to ask your thoughts on this because we've talked about this offline a bunch. When you see Judd Anderson in the warm-up line, you're talking about the way it's supposed to look. He's 6'6", possibly 6'7", and he's extremely coordinated. So a lot of times these tall guys, they look a little goofy. That's why you don't see too many 6'6" plus quarterbacks in the NFL, right? It's hard to coordinate at that spot. Travis Thomas, I know this is your guy, Judd. So this one's for you.
By the way, Travis, we are probably the biggest Judd fans out there of like the Canes media. I would say we've definitely, because people were very down on Judd when he was a take. It was early in Dawson's coaching career at Miami. It was like his first recruiting cycle, right, D? So it was kind of like, oh, this is the guy that we're going to take in this class. And a lot of people were down on him. The tools are there. And sorry to cut you off, D, but I just wanted to put it out there that we're fans of his, but should he be the backup this year? I don't know yet.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Pete. And, with Judd, it's like I said, the size of the coordination stands out. He is smooth as silk in terms of just moving around. Basketball players, a double-double player as a front court player. And that's when they return to that, because we talked about it earlier. I like to look at not just are they multi-sport athletes? What sport did they play? How does it translate to their game in football? With Judd, he was a double-double front court player, 6'6" plus, and extremely coordinated mover. I'm not sure he's not the best running quarterback we had on the roster this year and last year. I've seen him take off and run, and he is faster than Cam Ward and probably faster than Carson Beck. He runs. Like, he can actually run at 6'6". Like, talk about like 20, 30-yard gains before anyone even gets to him. He has a lot of quick twitch at his size. So those are all the factors that support, that help him out. He has a smooth delivery, and he has a good arm. The negative on Judd, I would say, just like all the positives from being that kind of, what do you think about a front court basketball player? Going to have size, going to be a good athlete, explosive, whatever, rebounder. Front court players typically don't make decisions on the basketball team. Unless you're like a Luka Doncic or a LeBron James, your front court players are usually the finishers, the point
rebounders,
guard. Yeah. Right. The guards are the ones holding the ball, making decisions. Joe Burrow was a guard. Cam Ward was a guard. So I think the difference from a basketball standpoint is that when you put Judd in the pocket, I'm not sure he has the vision and the feel, at least at this point of his development. And we saw Cam Ward as a 24-year-old, 23-year-old. Judd's still, 19, 20. So at this stage of his development, he's not like a senior Cam Ward as far as seeing the field. I don't think he has that background.
He's not a natural quarterback, right? If that's what you're
natural distributor, natural playmaker, just the feel for kind of, this guy's open, boom.
It looks natural when he's making the throws, but it's, the going through the progressions, reading things quickly, and then getting the ball out when he sees it.
Right.
It's that connection between the mind and the body.
Exactly. And then I think just the feel for distributing, right? So that will come with time. Hopefully will come with time. Sometimes it never comes with time, but I think he's a redshirt freshman this year, right? Last year he redshirted. This year he's a redshirt freshman. He's the kind of guy to me that you look down the road when he's like a redshirt senior. I know that sounds like a long time from now, but Cam Ward came to us as a fifth-year starter because of the COVID year. Cam Ward literally started 5 years, which is unheard of. Just like Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix were like 5-year starters. It's like unheard of to start 5 years because you only have 4 years of eligibility. Of course, the COVID year kind of changed that for the freshman starters at the time. So Judd is way behind that in the learning curve, but Carson Beck is entering his 5th year. To say I want to see what Judd looks like in his 5th year is not an insult to Judd. I'm just being realistic. This is an experienced position. A comp I would make, I'm not saying he's going to be like this, but similar kind of skill sets, is a guy that we loved, which is Tyler Shuck. So Tyler Shuck, Pete, when he played Louisville, we were watching the film to prepare for that game when Miami played Louisville. We go, this guy looks better than the quarterbacks at some of these blue chip programs. I'm looking at these top 10 teams, and I'm not sure Tyler Shuck's not better than all these guys. Tyler Shuck went on to be a second round pick. So our instincts were right on that. But Tyler Shuck didn't go into the season as a top, second round pick. And that was after 5 years of college. I think he might be a 6th-year player. Mario Cristobal actually recruited Tyler Shuck to Oregon. So Judd to me is more of a let it bake kind of player. We'll see what progress he's made. He looked better in spring than he did in fall. Looked better in fall than he looked the spring prior. So he's going in the right direction. I wouldn't say he's game ready right now, but we'll see which direction he goes. I hope he sticks it out because he's very much a developmental type of player. And I say that not as an insult. That's just the reality. And others have been like that have had success.
Greatness 305 Q says, how can we say Shannon Dawson developed Cam, but none of these young guys, they don't trust any of them and they all look bad. I don't think we're sitting here saying that Shannon Dawson turned Cam Ward into the number 1 overall pick. I think Shannon Dawson would humbly probably tell you himself Cam was Cam before he got to him. But the proof is in the pudding. This is what I say about Mario too, because did Mario develop Cam Ward? No, he didn't develop him. But what did Mario and Shannon Dawson do this year with Cam that was different than the situation at Washington State? Had more talent up front, obviously. You could argue that his receivers at Washington State, you've made that argument, might have actually been better as the NFL showed. But they put him in a position to up his stock. That's all they did. It's on Cam at that point to go out there and execute. But they gave him Mario Cristobal and Coach Mirabal gave him some of the best protection up front you could ask for. Shannon Dawson, let him be him, right? I don't think that any of us have said, man, look at those schemes drawn up by Shannon Dawson. Incredible. Now, some of it is probably a more part of it than people realize. It's not all Cam, but at the same time, Shannon Dawson let Cam be Cam. And I think he needs more credit than he's gotten in that respect because he didn't meddle too much. We didn't hear, oh, look, Mario's not letting them throw the ball down. We didn't hear that as much this year, right, D?
No.
At all, which was a huge thing going into the season. So, again, are we saying that Shannon Dawson turned Cam Ward from a late round pick to undrafted player, which that's what the NFL was telling him he was a year ago. So what changed? I think he was just put in the position to up his stock, and that's what he went out there and did.
Yeah, 100%. Also, the running game I would add, because you look at Cam Ward, the difference in Cam Ward stats from Washington State to Miami is pretty profound. He was already good, but look at the stats. Efficiency, whole different caliber. He was in the 50s in a lot of categories, offensively and individually in terms of efficiency, moves up to 1 in everything by a lot. So I think the running game was the biggest difference up front in general. Protection, running game helped Cam Ward more than any schemes. Cam Ward, by the time he got to Miami, had already played. If you're comparing Cam Ward to some of these other guys, Cam Ward came in to Miami he started 25 games in Washington State, and he started 2 seasons at Incarnate Word. So he was already a 4-year starter before he played. That's unusual. So yeah, he didn't develop that much. By the way, on Cam Ward, Canes Cat saying, confirmed by Adam Schefter, Cam Ward's a starter. Will Levis out for the year with a shoulder. I think we kind of knew that Cam Ward would be the starter, but certainly there's no going back. I don't know who their backup is, but Cam Ward is that guy. But yeah, with Judd, let him develop. As people are saying, it sounds like a tight end. I think he could be one of those guys that if quarterback doesn't develop for him, I think he could be a very good tight end, truthfully. He needs to put on some weight, but I think, he's not that skinny, and I've seen him run. He's strong. I could see tight end if it doesn't work out at quarterback, but I would give it more time at quarterback. You just got to see how he develops. All the intangibles I heard are great. He works hard. Hopefully it happens in Miami, but it's portal era, a lot of times.
Yeah, Travis, I listen, I think we can agree there is time, but at the same time, at the same point, from the player's point of view, if it's like DJ said, it's portal era, so we'll see what transpires throughout the year. But I think there's still something to him, man. I really do.
2 great comments. Matthew Owen saying Buck Ortega, not a bad comp by Matthew Owen. Buck Ortega was a really athletic, toolsy quarterback during that early 2000s era. Didn't develop as a quarterback, ended up moving to tight end, and he actually played multiple seasons in the NFL as a quarterback and special teams player. His teammate, Sean Taylor, in high school, Drex is saying that Dorsey got picked off by Sean Taylor for when he was on the 49ers, teammate of Buck Ortega. And Greatness asking, do you think we don't win the ACC this year? We end up playing the young quarterbacks next year. I mean, I hope we win the ACC. I said, if I had to bet, I'm picking Portal for the reasons I've said earlier. What do you say, Pete?
I agree, and I think if they don't win the ACC this year, then it hammers the point home even more that they go get another portal QB. I don't think that if they don't do what they expect this year, I think they'll go swinging once again. I think they're definitely not going to sit around at that point.
Nope. All right. So last one on the list, Luke Nickel. Right. So Luke Nickel, 4-star quarterback out of Milton, Georgia, or Milton High School, Alpharetta, Georgia, Atlanta area. Number 2 team in the country last year. He's somebody who, when he committed, was a 3-star. He came down here and played Western, which is a South Florida school. Shout out to Coach Macho, who's the defensive coordinator, poster on the CanesInSight message boards. And he struggled in that game. I think that's fair to say. Just arm strength wise, just didn't look the part. That led to him being a 3-star for most of the process, at least on 247. Has an incredible senior year. Number 2 team in the country. Dominant. I think he was like 22 for 23 in the state championship game. I mean, elite. Ends up being a 4-star player. Also finished in the 11 for the Elite 11. So he was an actual legit Elite 11 quarterback, meaning top 11 finisher at the Elite 11 event. Comes here in spring. No Carson Beck. So he starts off playing a lot of third team. And he struggled at times, but it was the kind of like, I liked what I saw. Now, here's the Luke Nickel experience in spring. Pete, you were out there as well. When you see him in the warm-up line, you're talking about, he doesn't look like Judd Anderson. He doesn't look
I'll be right back to you. I got to.
Yep. He doesn't look like Judd Anderson. He doesn't look like Emory Williams. Size-wise, a much different picture, right? So he looks small when he's in the warm-up line, because he is not as tall as a Judd Anderson, 6'6". Emory Williams is a heavy 6'5", 6'4". So you're talking about just bigger players kind of compared to him. So first impression, you're saying he's smaller. He's really not that small. He's 6'1", 200 plus pounds. But compared to those big, huge quarterbacks, Carson Beck probably put him in that same category. He looks small, but he's not that small. And then you see him with the third team, and talk about walk-on receivers, walk-on running backs, walk-on offensive linemen, and a lot of the defensive players were scholarship players rotating in. So a lot of times you had receivers that can't get open the same way. Receivers aren't going to catch the ball the same way. Protection is not going to be there. He threw a ton of interceptions, missed throws. I mean, he was all over the place early. But I remember thinking, he doesn't have it around him, the talent. And he's trying to throw. Some guys in that situation, they'll crumble up and get sacked a ton because they don't have the protection. Then guys aren't open, and they'll just kind of shell up and get sacked. What Luke Nickel did, which was different, was he'd escape. He'd try to make plays, showed a natural pocket feel. He could step up. He can get out of the pocket. Not a runner, but very, very instinctive in the pocket. He feels it. And then he was throwing it down the field, man. So I think when you talk about just the natural instincts at the position, he has it. As the spring went on, he got more snaps with the second team, got more snaps with the first team, made more plays. You saw him in the spring game hitting Malachi Tony deep. Still threw picks, but they weren't picks from being tentative. They were picks from being aggressive. He was trying to do things he did in high school. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but he was testing his limits. So I am a Luke Nickel fan after spring. I think he has the right mindset. I think he's got great instincts in the pocket. He sees the field. He's aggressive. He makes plays. He has that playmaking mentality. I think his size and arm strength are fine for the college level, more than fine. So I'm bullish on Luke Nickel, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah, I quite frankly was getting pretty tough reports on him when he first got here, D, and really, really improved as it came along. And I missed the part you just said, but the adjustment to like the speed of the game and trying to fit balls in to spaces that weren't necessarily there was an adjustment for him. Now it was his first, few months on campus there, and it was a big adjustment. Obviously, I don't know that we're looking at a guy who has like freakish athletic ability, but as you've said, you've compared him to Tim Tebow, man. And Jalen Hurts. So I'm not going to take anything away from his ability to, he's not a statue, right? So he's not a stiff guy in the pocket. We can move a little bit. And I think the willingness for him to push the ball downfield is that's a trait that not every quarterback has. Now, continuing to connect at a high rate is going to be the goal there, but that is something that I don't know that Emory. It's like not in Emory's DNA to like push the ball downfield, right? So that's something that I would give Luke a heads up, a notch on there, but. Yeah, I still think there's going to be some development there.
Yeah, and P was tongue in cheek slightly about the TMT vote, Jalen Hurts. I was joking. I mean, they ran the same plays for him in high school. He's not that kind of athlete, but I would compare him more like a Sam Howell. That's to me the best physical comp. I think Sam Howell might have a little more juice in his arm, NFL quarterback, but Nichols similar build, similar athleticism, similar kind of DNA playmaking. William Smith says, the last 10 national championship quarterbacks were from high school. NFL success means nothing for natties. I mean, is that right? The last quarterback was Will Howard. I mean, he was a transfer. Stetson Bennett was a transfer. I don't think I have to go back and look at who the national championships were, but I wouldn't say that's the case. And also, the portal's new in terms of like what we're talking about. Like, it's a new thing. Certainly the two best quarterbacks last year, I would say. I mean, the guy that won the Heisman was Jaden Daniels before Cam Ward.
Joe Burrow was a
transfer. Yeah, I'm just looking at the list here. Joe Burrow was a transfer. So
Jalen Hurts.
I know Alabama won with a transfer quarterback at one time, Coker, and that was back in the day. But yeah, I mean, Cam Newton was a transfer.
Went to Oklahoma. I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah,
Cam Newton was a transfer. He was pretty good. Right. And this is like before the transfer portal era really was cooking. I think now you'll see portal quarterbacks. I mean, look right now, Julian Sane, he's even a transfer. You think it was a high school quarterback. He's actually a transfer. He transferred from Alabama. So, we'll see on that, but I think you got to follow trends. George Cherry saying, who's the next top quarterback in South Florida today? Get him by all means necessary. Who was the last South Florida quarterback who went to Miami? I think Stephen Morris was the last one who started. But bad news, George. The top quarterback in South Florida is actually the top quarterback in the country, which is Dia Bell. He's going to Texas. So that one hurts. I think that one, we've talked about it a lot because it was so early, but man, I'm a big Dia Bell fan, having seen him. I know you saw him as well, Pete, and like him. I think it's going to be a great one. And then, think of obviously Lamar Jackson, Bridgewater, Geno Smith back in the day, Jacoby Brissett, but even recently, Fernando Mendoza, CJ Bailey, I think is going to be a really good player. We got to get, there's one more trend we got to reverse, and Dia Bell, unfortunately, I think is going to be a good one for Texas.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's growing on me for sure. I will say I talked to someone yesterday who was connected to someone with a coaching staff that played against Heritage in the playoffs, and they said, man, we had a way better chance of beating them with Dia Bell at quarterback than we did with Malachi Toney. They had this coach said they had no chance once they saw it was going to be Malachi starting in that game. So, just an interesting thing there.
Yeah, well, we should add Malachi Toney to the quarterback mix, man. I saw him and Darren Coleman go head-to-head in the state championship game, and I mean, Malachi Toney he looked like Cam Ward. He didn't even run. He was like 20. He was like 19 of 20 or something at one point, and he wasn't even running. He'd move around a little, but he was throwing the ball, man. Just a special talent there. All right, real quick before we switch gears to basketball, Pete. My man Coach Jenko, he went to Islas Canarias after his game. Hopefully they won at Columbus. He said, I got the palomilla steak, best I've ever had. Best cafecito in Florida, made the right way. Guava pastelito is elite, and the best croquetas you will ever have. Definitely the number one spot for Cuban food to go. That's from Coach Jenko. Appreciate you. And, I mean, he's right, man. Islas Canarias Express, number one Cuban restaurant on the planet, right there in the Dayland Mall Dining Pavilion, although I believe Coach Jenko went to the classic location in Tamiami. Either one, man, you're in good hands. 7 different types of croquetas. You're talking about pig. If you're a fan of pork, there's nowhere better. You mentioned the steak with the palomilla steak right there. They got all kinds of steak, handhelds like sandwiches, Cuban sandwich, all medianoche, any kind of sandwich you want. They got that to go. I mean, the menu is extensive, comprehensive. Not only do they have all the Cuban classics, they got Venezuelan stuff like tequeños. They got like vegan options. I mean, they got everything in the world, plus all the different beverages, Cuban style. Listen to Coach Jenko, Islas Canarias, the number one Cuban spot